This is The Competitive Edge with Aaron Ross. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge so you too can reach your full potential. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's get started. What's up, Competitive Edge listeners? I hope you're having an awesome day. I certainly am. I'm excited for this show. Today we have best-selling author and sales and lead generation expert Aaron Ross on the show. Aaron is the author of Predictable Revenue and responsible for creating a sales machine at Salesforce.com that grew the company's recurring revenue by $100 million a year. That's a lot of dough. Today, we're going to talk a lot about startups and sales and lead generation. And I really like this conversation because a lot of Aaron's advice goes counter to things that I see big and small companies not only being told to do, but practicing to this day. So we'll talk about some of these big mistakes that sales leaders and sales teams make and how to fix them within the context of building a revenue machine. And building a sales and revenue machine that's independent of hiring rockstar salespeople. Don't worry, we'll cover how to do that too, as well as share some clever ideas, including the best sales voicemail strategy I've ever heard. Now, you might be saying, okay, I'm not into building a sales team, so adios. Well, to all those people, I think there's plenty of goodies in this episode that you might want to stick around for. Things like how Aaron has structured his life to only work 25 hours a week while more than tripling his business over the past few years. Here's a hint. Turns out when the answer can't be working more, you're forced to work smarter and be more resourceful. All right, let's go ahead and hear from Aaron Ross. Aaron, what's up, man?
Hey, Scott.
So, Aaron, I want to dive right into the meat here. And I just, told you a little bit about how you just got done your book and learned a ton of new awesome stuff. And I think that we're all going to learn a ton of amazing insights in this interview today. And I wanted to start out by just talking a little bit about some of the common mistakes that you see amongst sales leaders and companies with outbound sales teams.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. We can talk about sales for a second. I thought everyone wants to know about my 8 kids, but
I mean, dude, I want to know about your 8 kids too, because that's pretty big feat in itself. I mean,
well, maybe later.
I'm not quite ready for that in my life, but I'm sure there's people out there who would find value in that.
Well, when you get kids in a big family, that's when you need for sure predictable revenue. But sales mistakes, and there are a lot of them. So let's start with, and there's different kinds of companies. So let's start with the kinds of companies that actually have a sales team of more than a few people. Because I know there's a lot of probably solopreneurs out there who are people who sell. But typically with sales teams or companies with salespeople, I'd say the most common mistake is having a sales team of everyone's doing everything, generalists. So it's a team of salespeople where they're doing their own prospecting, they're closing their own deals, and they're managing their own book of business or their own customers.
Now, okay. Why is that a problem?
Okay, and that is probably the number one problem. But why it's a problem is because it's like you don't know what's working and what's not. When they're juggling everything, they're multitasking all the time, so they're not really good at anything. And the biggest problem is you end up with this revenue roller coaster system, where sometimes things are going great and you blow out your month or your quarter, but other times you miss your number and you're never really sure why. And there's no predictability because there's no system. And so a little bit like every man for themselves. And if you do well, great. And if you don't, you're out. But there's no, I would say, systematic process that increases that makes success certain. It's a lot of guesswork.
So let's dive into this a little bit. I mean, would it not be possible to have a sales rep measure their lead generation activities, then their meetings, and then their closes, and still be able to provide accurate metrics?
No, it's not actually. I mean, I'm being totally serious, because once in a while you get the unicorn, like a salesperson who can prospect and close and sort of keep it all together consistently. But you can't build a team of them. I mean, that's like the one star you get out of, I don't know, maybe every 10 or 20 people.
I mean, hypothetically, if you had 8 kids and they were all learning from a master, it might be possible.
I don't know. And I can share, they do use my own techniques on me. But so what happens, and there's the reasons why it doesn't work. Is first, so as I say, salespeople shouldn't prospect, because in general, salespeople, so people the men and women who close deals, shouldn't, because usually they're not any good at it in the first place. They don't want to do it in the second place. And in the third place, it's not sustainable or predictable. Because even if you get that rare person who can prospect effectively and they fill their pipeline, then they get so busy closing deals that they stop prospecting. And then they get into this, feast or famine mode. And honestly, like once in a while, I mean, there are people out there that can consistently prospect and close, but they're so rare that you can't build a team around them, and you certainly can't build a predictable or scalable team around them. That's the exception. But what you can do is you can build a system or a process, which you don't want the salesperson to be the star. You want your system to be the star. Because if you have a good system or sales systems, we can go into what that means, you can hire a good person and they will be successful. So in other words, let me give you an example with like prospecting or with lead generation. So a lot of companies or people are obsessed about their sales process. How do we move people through from proposal or qualification to proposal to close, and what are objection handling and so on. But look, I say you could have the most perfect sales process in the world, but if your lead generation lags or is crummy, you're going to struggle. On the other hand, if you have great lead generation, you can get pretty much everything else wrong, and you're going to do well.
There's a higher margin of error, I'd imagine.
You get a lot of slack to get stuff wrong that way. And so going down to what's one way that a lot of sales teams and companies expect lead generation to happen is through their salespeople doing their own prospecting. Maybe either to fill most of their funnel or even half or some significant portion. Sometimes companies get inbound leads, sometimes they don't. But this goes back to, okay, if lead generation is what drives your company's growth, it's not the size of your sales team, it's the size of your lead generation or your pipeline. And if it's pipeline or lead generation that drives growth, not salespeople, one of the most predictable ways to actually create leads consistently is with dedicated. It's a little bit of an answer here to the problem, but it's dedicated prospectors. So, for example, what do you do? Okay, salespeople shouldn't prospect. What do you do? Well, you have prospectors who prospect, and they don't close, and they don't respond to inbound leads. They prospect, and closers close. They do a little bit of prospecting, but really to like 5 or 10 strategic accounts or key partners. But most of their time should be filled up with deals that their prospectors or maybe marketing, wherever the leads are coming from, isn't really that big a deal as long as they're any good. But they should be closing, working their pipeline, not banging the phones or cold calling. Like, why would you have your most expensive people doing, it's called like it's valuable, but it's work that cheaper people could do who are less experienced and hungrier and do it better.
Yeah. So in an ideal world, you have people out there finding all the people that potentially make sense to sell to or do a partnership or with whatever it is. And then you have those people are the same people qualifying those opportunities to make sure that they're a good fit before you bring in the closers. Can you kind of paint the ideal system?
Yeah. So ideally you start with, and there's a lot of details in the book, but at a high level, you start with who's your ideal outbound customer. And this could be done whether you're prospecting directly for customers or lots of times companies prospect for partners or channel partners. But who is ideal to go after? Step 1. Step 2 is you build a list, and whether that's sometimes you can get lists from places like online databases like data.com, or sometimes you have to hire a firm to go build it by hand, but you have to build a list. Third step is you run campaigns. So you have a prospector. They could either call, they could email. I found a lot of success through email, cold email, but they're doing campaigns. and they're doing A/B test campaigns. Let's send this email, and then let's send this other email. It's the same except for a different subject line. Let's see what we get. So run campaigns, they get responses. That leads, step 4 is to conversations, where you want to sell the dream. Why are you interesting? Why they should be interested? Again, whether it's a customer, partner, whoever. And step 5 is pass the baton, which is when you said, okay, this is an opportunity. I'm talking to someone who's got some influence or power at this company. They have a need. We can help them. I'm now going to bring in my senior partner, who's an account. In software, you usually call them an account executive or whatever, but they're a closer. I'm going to bring them in, and there'll be a baton pass for them to take it over.
Got it. So I'm interested to dive in a little bit deeper and clarify around the step 4 of selling a dream, because a lot of these people that you put on this list might actually be terrible fits for your company and for you to spend any time trying to close. What are the type of ways that you can qualify a particular customer who seem to match the ideal profile before sending them off to the closer?
Well, usually a prospector most often should have some kind of phone conversation with a prospect before they set up a second, longer conversation with the closer. So there's two ways. You can have some email quick questions. In fact, here's some specific tips. I find a lot of companies, you want to be very insightful about how do you tell apart the companies who could be a fit and who could be interested or who are interested versus the ones that actually pull out their checkbook and buy. It's like if you could only ask 2 or 3 questions, if you're only allowed to ask 2 or 3 questions, period, and with those 2 or 3 questions, you have to figure out, are they sort of like a not that great a fit, or are they a great fit? What would those questions be? And the trick is to ask those questions. It could be over email, it could be over the phone. But it's like today, you don't get it. It's hard. You can't have some of these sales trainers who say, well, you should find out their problems and give them what they need. The problem is people don't know you. They're not going to give you the time to figure out their problems. It's like you have to take a guess at what their problems are, and is as simple and quick manner as possible. At least try to get a gauge of, do they need what we've got? Could they be a fit, or are they not a fit? And should I move on?
Can you give an exact example of like this type of like scenario and a specific question that you would ask to qualify, just so people can better understand this concept?
Sure. So, for example, if you sell software, let's say you sell, I don't know, if you were sell marketing software, there's a couple, like HubSpot or Marketo are 2 popular ones. Mm-hmm. It's called inbound marketing software, marketing automation software. And this question applies, but a simple question would be, this could be over email, after you've gotten an initial response from somebody. So if I start at the point of, let's say I like a referral approach. So let's say you go to the CEO of a company, say, hey, John, I'm just curious who handles your marketing. And could you point me, could you tell me how to get in touch with them, please? Okay. John refers you to Jane, the VP marketing. And you might just send a quick little note to Jane, of which has one question, not more than one, but one question might be, hey, Jane, do you mind if I ask what you're using today for your marketing automation? And because here's the trick is the question has to be easy to answer and insightful enough that you learn something useful. Because if I find out what kind of software they're using for whatever I care about, it could be marketing or sales or billing, that tells me a lot. If they don't use, so if let's say she writes back, says, we don't use anything today. Great. That's fantastic. I've learned a lot. They're probably a great customer, or could be potential. I might follow up with one more question. Let's say that she writes back and uses a competitor. If so, then I'll probably, if I know my competitors, I'll probably know right away, if 80% likelihood, what their problems are. So it just tells me a lot of information about who they are, what they do. Or if you sell a per seat, let's say you sell something to sales teams, even asking how many salespeople do they have. Like whether they have 5 or 50 can make a big difference in my understanding of what revenue opportunity, how much money, how big a deal could there be, what are their likely problems, and so on. So those 2 or 3 of those quick questions that can tell you a lot about who they are, and also whether they're worth working on further or not.
Right.
But seriously, the important thing is don't ask a question. Here's what not to do. Think about we don't know each other because this is prospecting. And if I asked you, and this is whether it's by phone or email, my first question is, hey Scott, what are your top marketing goals this year? So it's an open-ended question, but it's freaking hard to answer for most people. They're like, it takes a lot of mental energy. Even if I trust you enough to tell you, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I'm having mental knife fights in my head right now trying to answer that question for myself, man.
Exactly. But if you ask a question like, hey Scott, what'd you have for lunch today?
Well, I had a protein shake.
Yeah. Or in business, the equivalent might be, what software do you use for this? It's an open question, but it's specific enough where it makes it easy to answer.
Right. And I guess
it's not a struggle.
Yeah, and I guess the key is almost kind of reverse engineering like what you can learn by the answers that they give, right? So
exactly. With the fewest answers possible.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense, man. I know a big thing for us at my last company was just always trying to eliminate all friction from getting a response, whether that was a cold email or a cold call. And the easiest way to do that is to keep it simple and keep it short.
And that's why I don't ask more than one question per email.
That's awesome advice, man. So I know a lot of people that are listening to this right now, they don't have a sales team of 5 to 10 people. And they're maybe thinking in their head right now, like, yeah, this idea of specialization makes total sense, but how the heck can I apply this? And when should maybe a company that's growing from 1 to multiple salespeople think about applying this?
Well, yeah, if you're one person, the way you apply it, but you apply it to your calendar. So, for example, let's say that you are a salesperson and you're the only salesperson at the company, right? Well, and prospecting is the thing that you need to work on. Schedule, pick a day a week or 2 days a week or an afternoon, or you probably want blocks of time of at least 2 hours. That's for prospecting. So again, there's these 4 core roles. The sales team, if you have a few people, you have prospectors who prospect is one. A second one, if you have inbound leads, you've got sort of inbound lead qualifiers who just respond to website leads is the second. The third type of sales role is closers, bringing new business. And the fourth type is account management or customer success. Basically, the salespeople who work with current customers. So if you're a salesperson or an entrepreneur, if there's a bottleneck, you need more leads, then block out time to prospect. Or let's say you're having trouble with attrition. A lot of customers are leaving. Okay, block out time for customer success, figuring out how to help them be more successful. But it's really applying that to your calendar. It's really about focus and not multitasking.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. What would you say to somebody who maybe has 1 to 3 salespeople and says, I don't have the resources for dedicated prospectors. My people need to go out and need to be out there closing. Okay.
So let's say that you've got 2 salespeople and they're already there. You can I would have them budget their time, pick an afternoon, 2 afternoons a day, whatever, and them to have a buddy system to prospect together to keep them accountable to it. But the next person you hire, that if you have a new opening, hire someone that you make a prospector. And there's this false belief that, I want people who can close. And every person I close has a quota of $500,000, that means for my sales, if I need $5 million, I just need 10 salespeople. So there's this overweighted belief that hiring a salesperson who closes will bring in revenue. And it's only true if they've got leads. So yes, if you have 2 salespeople and you hire 1 more person, if your current salespeople are so busy with their pipeline that they can't handle all the leads, hire another closer. if your salespeople are struggling for leads and complaining about the quality of leads they're getting, hire a prospector. So you got to be smart about who you're hiring. Like, how do you break the bottleneck you've got, and not just trying to hire more, grow sales by hiring more salespeople.
Makes sense. Now, while we're on this topic of hiring, I mean, a question that I get a lot is, how do I hire good salespeople? Where do I find them? How can I tell whether this person's going to be good or they're just good at selling themselves?
Yeah,
I'd be super interested to hear your opinion on this.
Okay. Well, actually, there's a hiring guide. It's really for prospectors, but there's a lot of the principles apply. Really, and there's a cool recruiting process at predictablerevenue.com/recruiting that you can check out. But I would say the most underrated quality for salespeople that is just coachability. Can they be coached? Do they want to be coached? Do they want to learn? Are they so cocky that they're not able to get any better at what they do? It's so true. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. In other words, it's hard to teach a salesperson with a lot of sales experience new tricks.
Yeah.
So I'd be the number one place I think that, okay, yeah, you want someone who's energetic, who loves sales, they want to succeed, they want to make money. But how often are they coachable? So I think that would be the thing that one of the things I'd look at first. And the second one I'd say is, yeah, okay, they should make money, want to make money, but it shouldn't be the number one thing. Well, I guess it's unless you're number one thing. But the best salespeople are the people who also they want to help. They want to help customers. They want to help their teammates. And money is on the list of the top 5 things, but it's not their number one thing. They want to make a difference. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to help their company and their team succeed and themselves. But when it comes down to making a choice between, so they always run into these situations. Do I close this deal by fudging the truth, whether I do it consciously or not, or do I not close the deal and maybe not make more money now, but I'm going to be happier, customer's going to be, prospect or whoever's going to be happier, and it's a good long-term investment. I mean, you want salespeople that are going to do the right thing, not ones who are going to usually do the right thing, but sometimes, make problems happen.
Where do you find these people?
Well, I think, honestly, if you're a company that's going to grow, and sometimes, so if you're a software company or a company that is growing, wants to grow, the best place is usually to grow them up in a farm team system in your own company. So creating junior level positions, again, could be prospectors, could be inbound lead qualifiers, it could be just intern support. Customer support is a great feeding ground for, actually, any kind of role that you have at the company where people are interacting with customers is a great feeding ground for sales. You could be operations interns, anything, but some more of these low-level positions where you can bring in younger, hungrier people. They happen to be less expensive, but the nice thing is you get to know them, they learn a lot about your company, then you can promote them into sales roles and up through the ranks. And because you've got people who are going from one role to the next and moving through the company, you can have a very, very high success rate with your salespeople. It's like you get faster ramp times because they already know the company, they know how it works, and you should have like a 90% success rate with your salespeople.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you're saying right now just fits into this whole schema of creating a machine, right?
Yeah.
In that if somebody's coachable, you should be able to plug and play them into a system, and they should, with a 90% accuracy, be able to perform at a high level.
Yeah.
And the truth be told is that I think a lot of people out there, and hey, I mean, we're all guilty of this at some point, are just kind of fudging it and slopping it together instead of starting out with this kind of like higher ambition of creating a machine.
Yep.
So how do you, and I'm curious, like, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience at Salesforce, how you guys came across all of this. I know from reading your book that it wasn't just beginner's luck, and there was a lot of testing experimentation. But I'd love to learn with that experience in mind, how does somebody go about building this machine from day one and really allowing it to grow into this?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think it does begin with your mindset in terms of sometimes, especially when you have a small business or you're growing, it's really hard to slow down and reflect on what's worked and what hasn't. It's really easy. I mean, honestly, it's easy for people to work a lot of hours. That's the default. It's hard to work fewer hours, or especially if you have lots of stuff to do. So I think it's that discipline to stop and reflect, rather than just our human reaction is if things aren't going well or as well as we want, we just do more of what we're already doing. In other words, more of what's not working.
Totally. And people also hate reflecting because A, it requires thinking, which is actually hard work. Yeah. And B, it also requires you to look at crappy results.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it. Well, in other words, think about a salesperson who's not making their number. Okay, what's their manager saying? 95% of the time, the manager is saying, make more phone calls, do more activity, send more emails, make more calls. Right? Mm-hmm. How often does a manager say, okay, go back and just look at your last 3 months and come back and tell me when you hit your numbers or when you got deals in, like what did you do differently then versus when you were struggling? Have you ever heard that?
Absolutely not.
No. So, I mean, a lot of it's habit. This is just a lot of the way sales teams are run today is just through habit that's been built up over the last 100 or 200 years, really. There's not a lot of real thinking or innovation in the way they're run. Again, for example, the average sales team attrition, at least in the business-to-business world, is 25 or 27% a year, which means if you have 100 people at the beginning of the year, whether they're fired or whether they quit, you'll lose, let's say, 27 by the end of the year, and you're left with 77. That's average. It's crazy high. And I think in some industries it's even higher, but Salesforce.com 2 years ago had 3,000 salespeople, and they lost 750. And I can't imagine how many tens of millions of dollars it must have cost to replace almost 1,000 salespeople in a year just to keep their team at the same size. Not even including the missed opportunities and all the frustration the customers get when they keep changing salespeople. It's a huge problem. And honestly, I think the only reason there's that much attrition is because people don't really realize that, wow, you mean we could actually have it's called under 10% sales team attrition, and that could be a good thing? Or like we shouldn't be firing all these people? It could be actually our responsibility. Maybe it's our systems, not the people, that's the problem. What?
Requires some mirror gazing.
Yeah, and it doesn't yet happen as often as it should in sales. It's a bit more, but honestly, probably the biggest new point in the next book I'm doing is the fact that sales team attrition should be not 27% a year, but more like 10%, under 10%. In fact, should have 0% voluntary attrition, which means people shouldn't. If in a good sales team that's doing well, people should not. No one quits.
This is an interesting topic because, I worked at the last company that I was with. We had a floor of 50 salespeople making phone calls. And I got to tell you, that's not an easy gig, especially when you're calling restaurants who are more concerned that the door sign is open, that the chef's showing up on time, and that their waitresses, aren't drinking in behind the bar. They're not necessarily interested in buying marketing software. So you can imagine that these conversations were not easy when you're cold calling them trying to get meetings. Yep. How do you keep people happy and motivated that are selling for you?
Yep. And you actually bring up a good point, by the way, is that was that like a 1 or 2 call close, or was it several meetings?
It was a multiple call close. So the first call is to set the meeting. Second call is to qualify. And then at that point, it was kind of a feel thing whether you would go from qualification into pitch and try for a close, or you would go qualification into another flat out pitch call.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to say one exception to the rule of specialization is that if you have, like consumer sales or one call closes, then you might have the same people calling and closing. But in the case you're talking about, you still want to have prospectors who are prospecting and closers who are closing. So, but how to keep people motivated? First of all, did you have it that way, or was everyone prospecting, closing their own deals?
So, I mean, we bought leads, and then people were doing the qualification and closing. So, I guess like in terms of like pipeline building, I mean, we were selling to local businesses, so there's 13 million of them out there. Like it wasn't like a highly sophisticated research process.
Yeah.
So it might be a unique situation, but I know that there was a lot of experimentation with people that were just pure qualifiers, pure prospectors. And honestly, I think by the time I left and the company sold, there wasn't enough data to really determine, or the data wasn't like the driving force, or there wasn't enough data for me to really, I guess, figure out what was going on. Yeah, I mean, I think this was a little unclear.
That's fine. I mean, you always got to use your damn brain and take the principles, but try stuff out and apply it to your specific situation. But going back to the motivation, so there's a few things that happen to help salespeople stay motivated. Again, if you have the kind of team where everyone's doing everything, a huge difference is if you switch to specialization and prospecting and helping fill the pipeline, the closers. That's a huge difference. Another thing, just regular communication with people. People hate surprises. No one likes, in business, no one likes surprises. Sales manager doesn't like being surprised when someone, misses their quote at the end of the month. Salespeople don't like surprises when suddenly there's a new comp today. So it's just keep the team engaged in what's going on. They also, a big factor, not so day to day, but over time, is career path. The best people want to grow, and if they don't see there's some kind of career path, a lot of people it's going to create a lot of frustration. And in the day to day, the day to day grind, not every day is going to be a good day. You're going to have, everyone has shitty days. Everyone has good days. So I think partly, I know it's popular now for everyone should be happy all the time and everyone should love their work all the time. And it's like, hey, it's okay to, have some great days and have some crummy days. And just, if you're going to have a shitty day, have a shitty day. You don't have to be happy all the time.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring this up, man. Because I live with like a bunch of happiness butterflies. And the idea of like a bad day with my life right now like seems unrealistic, but I think it's actually so important just for life, just to give yourself permission to not have the best day and understand that like every day is not going to be utopia.
Yep. It's impossible. You're human. It's impossible. So it's just being honest with yourself. So and the last thing I think is what I've heard, and I don't remember where I heard this, but it really resonated, is that people leave managers, not companies.
Truth.
And honestly, there's a lot of really, crummy managers out there, sales managers, who are hired. The funny thing about salespeople is that they're good at selling themselves. And in interviews, there's a lot of companies who hire sales executives or sales managers or salespeople, and especially founders who don't have a lot of sales experience, and they get sold, and they get a bad manager who is just about how many dials their team can make, whether it's working or not. It's about dials, and there's no communication, there's no coaching, but like a founder doesn't have enough confidence in sales to know what to do. This is me, by the way. I had a company that failed because I didn't, as a founder or CEO, didn't know about sales. But going back to the founder hires someone who's, not a great sales manager, and they don't know what to do, and they don't have the confidence. So honestly, I think this is a bit of a side point, but for executives and founders, you need to know how to sell yourself, both, I guess, do the selling plus know how it works in order to be able to hire the right people, coach them, and work with them in building your business. So in other words, you want to be able to delegate sales at some point, but not abdicate it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many implications of understanding that. I mean, whether we're talking about hiring the right person, coaching, making them feel good, interpreting the feedback that you're getting from that person, it's a great piece of advice. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick was I love this in your book, and people, and I'm myself included, I just love like super tactical little nuances that make us better at what we do.
Sure.
And in the cold call script that you gave some specific advice to say somebody's name twice. I don't know if I can't recall if it was for a voicemail or for the actual cold call itself, as well as the phrase, "Did I catch you at a bad time?" And I think that these are both little gems that people can apply if they're listening to this and they ever have to get on the phone for their business. And I'd love for you to kind of just dive into these a little bit and why these are both very powerful.
Okay. I actually don't remember the name. Oh, I saw the name twice. Well, actually, I'm going to give you a different voicemail.
Yeah, give me a voicemail, man. Give me some meaty tactics I can start throwing in there today.
Okay. I actually haven't done any A/B testing or stuff to see how well this works compared to the past ones, but I know it does. I've heard anecdotally from clients. So for voicemails, look, you just don't get called back. To be honest,
truth.
You just don't. And there are ways to get callbacks, but a little bit misleading. So I think voicemail should be used as a way to increase your email responses. And a client, so again, I consult with companies who are building outbound prospecting teams. And what a client did this, and that's where I got it from, but what they started doing was they'd leave a voicemail one day, and and then they would send an email the next. But the voicemail is something to the effect of, "Hey, this is Aaron Ross from Predictable Revenue. Blah, there might be some referral or maybe not, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm going to send you an email tomorrow. You can, later today or tomorrow sometime. If you could just please keep an eye out for it and respond to me there. I'd really appreciate it, please." Click.
I like
it. No phone number, no email. So what it does is it creates a little bit of a mystery loop. So ideally, that's why you want to wait several hours at least where they have more of a chance to listen to it. And they're primed so that when the email comes through, could be the next day, later that day, they're more likely at least to respond to the email.
That's a great tactic right there. I really, really like it. There's also some kind of weird psychology going on, or I can envision going on there, where like people want to be like remain consistent with like the type of people that they say they're going to be. And if somebody says like, "Hey, I'm going to send you this, can you please look out for it and respond?" All of a sudden just listening to you say that, I feel an added pressure to respond. Like this person knows I'm avoiding them for sure.
And if you noticed, I always say like manners are important. You can't say please too many times, and whether it's on the phone, you just make sure you say please. I think manners are becoming a bit of a lost art. Say please and thank you on voicemail, call, email, whatever.
My mom would be very appreciative and approve of that advice.
Yep. All right. So then you also asked about the did I catch you at a bad time?
Yes.
Well, and by the way, so the principle is when you call someone and they're not expecting it, whether it's a true cold call or whether it's someone you've traded emails with and you're just catching them, you need to give them you're interrupting them from something. So you want to give them a few seconds to let their minds orient. And you call it like asking permission to talk. So, "Hey, did I catch you at a bad time?" Some people like, "Did I catch you at a good time?" Or a phrase, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but," or those are like the common ones. Some people say, "Is this how's your day?" or "How's it going?" I actually don't like that one. I feel like that's that kind of question, which is like, I don't know, but.
Still trying to figure that out right now.
Yeah, but what happens if I catch you at a bad time? People always say, "Yeah, but what can I do for you?" The point is, it's sort of like your phone. So in the maps, if you're you pull up maps and you hit that little triangle which it orients on where you are. It's like, and then you can see what's around you. That's really what that question is doing. It's letting their minds orient on you and start getting ready to communicate, because they're still like they're thinking about that email they were writing, or they're still wondering who you are. there are these open loops in their head, and it's like if you start in on a pitch right away, I'm just going to get irritated because I'm not ready for you to talk. I'm not ready to input, I guess.
Right. It's a powerful pattern interrupt.
Yeah, that's the principle behind it. So whatever the phrase is, it's just giving them a few seconds to orient their brains on you and be ready to talk.
Love it, man. So, I heard one of your previous interviews, you say that you've managed to only work for 25 hours a week, or limit your work to 25 hours a week on average. And for me, that is a fascinating thing, because a lot of people out there that are ambitious and have done things like increase revenue by $100 million for Salesforce, they're not the type of people that are quote unquote working 25 hours a week. So I'd love just to learn a little bit more about how you've been able to achieve balance and just some of the benefits that have come from that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, where that came from. After I left Salesforce, this is like 2006, I spent a year at a venture capital firm as an EIR. I was basically getting paid to figure out what I wanted to do next. And after 3 months, I was working there 3 months. I had a bunch of company ideas, and I went off. I actually went to Japan and China for 3 weeks to, explore and sort of let things digest. And I remember realizing, wow, you know what? I don't want to start a company, a venture. I don't want to raise money. I don't want to start a software company. I'm not sure what I want to do, but I know I want to be able to make as much money as I want doing what I love. I'm not really sure what that looks like yet, but I'll figure it out. And along those lines of, I think, really reflecting and seeing what was going to work for me, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember feeling like when I worked, the more hours, working more hours isn't scalable. You can only, if you're working 60 hours a week and you need to double your output, what are you going to do? Work 120 hours? Which, by the way, I have worked a week or two in the past where I did 120 in banking, but it's not sustainable. And I just, in 2007, 2008, I just noticed that when I worked more than about 30 hours a week, I was able to do more stuff, but I lost a lot of these insights. Sort of the big picture ideas that could give me a real breakthrough. It's the forest for the trees, I guess.
Totally, man.
And I don't remember where the 25 hours came from. I just felt like that was for me. But the hardest part was actually practicing working less, because our default in our culture, it's easy to work a lot. Trust me, like most people, I say, hey, go work 60 hours next week. Most people are like, well, sure, I'm already doing 50. What's the big deal? But if I tell you, even let's say you don't have a job, let's forget the job part. If you're an entrepreneur, say, okay, go work 25 hours next week. The hard part is that mental, it's like practicing being okay with only working 5 hours a day or 3 or 4 days a week. And that's hard. So I found it was the decision. Now for me, that was what I felt was right. It was 25 hours a week. Now it's more like 35 because I've got more kids. It's a new book out, business is growing and so on. But so 35 hours a week for me feels like a lot. It's like a lot for me. But it worked for me. And what I found was that I'd still be able to get stuff done, but I still would have a lot of these, I'd say, bigger picture ideas I felt would be able to give me a quantum leap in what I was doing, such as some of the ideas that came into like the book Predictable Revenue.
Got it.
And it's been I'm practicing it for years. It's not, it ranges. I say it's maybe 20 to 30 hours a week. Some weeks it's more, some weeks it's less. But I do have it's not super strict, but I have like a regular routine now, especially with kids and family and work, where Mondays I do a few hours, and then I have a date with my wife in the afternoon. Like Tuesdays are calls, Wednesdays writing, Thursdays calls, Fridays a catch-all. And it's usually from like some days 9 to 3 with a break, or 9 to 4 with maybe a break and playing with kids in the middle. So there's sort of a structure, but it's also flexible.
Do you have to discipline yourself not to take opportunities or commitments or things that are going to potentially encroach upon this equilibrium that you've created?
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. I think that might have been one of the original reasons I did this, was to create. Constraints are a way to help you create increase your creativity.
Totally, man.
So, because when you have limited time, money, you can be perfectionist, and I felt like, okay, it might take me longer to get where, let's say I'm starting a company. All right, if I work 25 hours a week, it might take me more years, but should be more authentic, and I'll be able to have breakthroughs. I should be able to create a more sustainable company that way that fits me better. I don't know. It's actually worked out that way. It was all theory back then, but it's working. I mean, I'll do, by the way, just so you know, this year, I'm going to guess like between $6 or $7 or $800,000, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, $100,000 working now, maybe 30, 35 hours a week, and just me and a director.
That's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know where it all goes. I have high expenses with big, house and lots of kids, but
I think the baseball team that you're fathering is one source, I would say.
Yeah. So, and I haven't wanted to create like a software company yet, but I think the idea was this combination of, by working some hours a week, I get stuff done, but I wouldn't sacrifice these intuitive leaps. I would have these constraints. I would force myself to figure out how to better scale what I'm doing without throwing more hours at it, right? Because that's what we tend to do. All right, there's a problem, work more hours, spend money.
Yep.
It's like, okay, when we do creative. And also, part of it was to be balance and balance of life, but I think that was more of a side benefit. I think the reason I did it was to be more creative and smarter about business, making money, and life.
I really love that, man. I really love that. And it resonates with me because when you're sprinting 100 miles an hour, you just aren't as creative. Like, I've seen it in my own life. Like, you don't give yourself the mental bandwidth to be creative. And also, like, when you do give yourself, you're drained. You're not sharp. Yeah,
it's exhausting. And honestly, like, there are times, I said, sometimes, like 2 weeks ago, I was traveling, plus I was getting the first part of a new book out. So I probably worked, I don't know if this is true or not, let's say 40 hours, maybe more, to say 50. Once in a while, you got to get shit done and push something out the door. But, in general, that's pretty rare for me. Honestly, that's exhausting. I've also just become much more focused. And so now 3 hours of work, if I sit down and, it's very intense. So I'm much more focused and get a lot more done in a small amount of time than when I could basically screw around all day.
Yeah.
I had unlimited time to do it.
You have to be. So, Aaron, one of the questions that I like to finish with, and this is for listeners, because we've learned a lot today, right? We've talked about building sales teams, lead generation, the importance of specialization, all the way to specific tactics on cold calling, to, how do we maximize our time and really constrain ourselves to actually produce better work. Mm-hmm. But the question I want to finish with is if you had to give one little piece of advice to people out there that are looking to get a competitive edge in business overall, whether they have a sales team or not, what would that be?
Read predictable revenue.
Boom.
But so let me think about. I have one answer.
By the way, I feel like this is a "How is your day?" question.
No, it sort of is. Well, actually, I have one answer, which is a little more.
Go with the gut, man.
Okay, well, let me start with this one. It's learning how to listen to yourself. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? Honestly, a lot of my breakthroughs in my life, which includes kids, and it's like this 25-hour work week. It's like 8 kids. It's like, but also related to that is money. How do you make? If I don't break $1 million this year, it'll be next. Still doing the 25-hour, 35-hour work week. And I love my work is great. I really get a lot of fulfillment out of it. It's like, how do you make that kind of shit happen? And I think a lot of it for me is learning how to listen to myself, to those, I call them these whispers. And you can't hear them when you're running a mile a minute. But slowing down really helps. But it's these whispers that we all hear, which is, oh, I should travel. I should start a business. I should move to Brazil, which you did. Great. I should write a book. I should do this. I should study French. I should break up with my girlfriend or boyfriend. And we ignore those all the time because they're not practical. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't know. I'm an engineer, not an artist. There's a lot of examples. It could be my brother came out being gay when he was in college. All right, so I know there's lots of people, men or women, who are gay, but they don't really realize it until they start listening to those whispers when they're maybe teenager, preteen. So, some people know, but some people don't. Or they listen to there's that whisper, should I tell anyone? No, I shouldn't. In business, I should start a company, or I should quit my job, or I should get a job. I mean, how many solopreneurs struggle and they can't make money because they think, wow, well, I saw Tim Ferriss did it, so why can't I? Well, fuck. I usually don't swear, but
it's okay, man. The show is rated X.
That's fine. The best way to fund a company is job. Where else can you get paid to learn? Seriously. If you have the attitude that a job is a place where you can learn, not just and to make money. And by the way, if you're a single mom, sometimes you just got to make money, or a single parent. Who cares about learning? You sometimes just got to pay the bills. But so the point is, okay, whether it's should you quit a job, get a job, start a business, have kids, not have kids, etc. It's these whispers that we ignore, and I think it is this. And I have for years. I'm still getting better at it. I've just found that has really been when I follow them, and they start off quieter. I do something with them, they get a little bit louder as they go, like writing, books, kids. I don't know how to make money, how to make more money, because 3 or 4 years ago I was making, let's say, 80 grand. And then I got married. Then I had a lot of motivation. So it's like, how am I going to go from 80 grand a year to $800,000 a year? Honestly, it's listening to those whispers. So that would be the advice. Try to make it as specific as possible. Because if some people tell me to go find out what I love, like, that's not so easy. You don't know it. How many people know what they want to do with their life? You don't know what you love to do.
Yeah, you got to go try stuff.
Yeah, you got to try stuff. So you can't just say, hey, do what you love, because most people today don't know what the hell that is. So, but that's a part along the lines of listening to those whispers, whatever they are. So whether you call it intuition, maybe you're a spiritual person, practice, I don't care. But that is the thing that really has worked for me.
Dude, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I know that there's probably people out there listening who might have like an inkling to go pursue something and get some answers. Like myself, dude. Like, I wanted to see if living in a foreign country in Brazil, where I thought, the most beautiful beaches, women, and steak was going to fulfill me. And I had to go find it out just to give myself a peace of mind. But I hope. And
now you're moving back.
Dude, man, USA is sweet. I am moving back. I feel so incredibly blessed to have been born there and to live there and have the opportunity to spend my life there. But I'm really just excited that you talked about this, because there's people out there that probably have some whispers and they probably need some exploring, and maybe this gave them the little extra push they needed to go answer some questions.
Sure. And just start with a baby step. So you don't have to move to Brazil. You could visit, you could read about it, you could buy a book, you could watch a video. It's okay. Baby step. I mean, honestly, I think the last few years, it's just been lots and lots of baby steps that have been adding up to more and more as I go.
Totally, man. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. If people want to learn more about you, more about the books, the old one, the new one, all that good stuff, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, well, there's two. Predictablerevenue.com is the site. But I would actually go to predictablerevenue.com/triple, because that's where the new book is coming out, the Predictable Revenue Guide for your sales. So predictablerevenue.com/triple. That's all the stuff. And actually, I'm not as active on it now, but if you're interested in like the 25-hour work week and kids, we're adopting, so that's how we get to 8. We're working on 8 now. And I only got married 3 years ago, so you can try to work out that math if you can. But fulfillment and
are you scaling right now?
I am. The family. Well, that's why I need predictable revenues, because the family is growing my business.
You gotta build in those constraints, right?
Yep. Trust me, it's a good kick in the ass to. I mean, that's probably all the that's where the motivation came to grow the income 10 times. But that's it. more of a personal blog at pebblestorm.com. It's like a pebbles and rock and storm is in thunderstorm, pebblestorm.com.
I'm going to go check that out, man. Now I'm interested. Yeah. But thanks again for coming on the show, man. This has been awesome. And I look forward to checking out the new book when it comes out.
Yeah. Good. I'm excited.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to all the conversations, tactics, and mind shares we'll be sharing in the future, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. And while you're there, if you felt like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes as well. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes, links, and even a full searchable transcript of this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. I also want to give you the details on a cool contest I'm running right now at lifelonglearner.com/fun. By entering the contest, you'll have a chance to win everything from Amazon gift cards to a free month of having your very own dedicated virtual assistant to an opportunity to come and hang out with me and my buds for a few days, where we'll teach you how to create your very own passive income stream. To enter this contest and learn more about everything we're giving away, head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun. And now, let's dive into today's Mindshare. All right. Time for another Mindshare segment. So, fascinating interview with Aaron. One of the things we talked about at the end of the interview was this idea of finding your passion and seeking out answers and whispers and all that woo-woo stuff that I honestly think is very true, and I've had to do it in my own life. It reminds me a lot of a question that I get a lot from people that are maybe just starting out their careers or other young people that are trying to figure it out, just like I am, by the way. And they ask, what should I do with my career? Like, who should I work for? What are the best things I can do? And I think my advice is very similar to what Aaron says in many ways, is that take an educated guess. Listen to yourself. Take an educated guess at what you think the sweetest job ever would be, right? Or the absolute best person to go work for them would be. And go run towards that. And the moment you realize that that's not what you want to do, continue to iterate and go figure out what the next most amazing position you think would be to be in, and go run towards that and keep doing it. And, I think that like a lot of career advice out there that I got when I was coming out of college, like, you can't leave jobs too soon. That'll look bad on your resume, like all this stuff. And, my goal has never been to have like an award-winning resume. It's to be happy and to be in a position where I'm loving what I'm doing and having an impact. And the only way for me to figure that out was to go and try stuff. So like I had 4 jobs within my first 2 years of graduating because I was constantly trying stuff, quitting, iterating. And although like I might not have been very hireable at a lot of other places like Google, at a very earlier point in my career when all of my friends were like 2 or 3 years out and trying to figure out what they wanted to do, I'd had like 3 career midlife crises. And although like maybe my bank account wasn't as fat, I had a better understanding of myself, what made me happy, what excited me, what I excelled at. And that to me is actually far more important, especially as a young person. Because if your goal is to get to the sweet spot as fast as possible, that means that you are going to spend more time in that sweet spot. You're going to be happier because you're doing something that you excel at, and you can start becoming an absolute master of your craft earlier in your career. So, for me, like that's kind of the approach that I've taken. And it's even with this business stuff, like courses, ebooks, now I'm doing a podcast, who knows, maybe I'll do videos, maybe I'll go do something else. But you just have to constantly listen to these voices that are telling you to go try things and go try them. Get the answers for yourself, and then what you'll achieve, maybe you're a year or 2 behind, or maybe more, I don't know, in the bank account department, but you're way further along in the understanding of yourself, the self-awareness that comes with that, the just like all the amazing things that come from really understanding like what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what you're going to sell at. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken with my career. So far, it's working out pretty decent for me. I'm a pretty happy dude, and I've gotten to try a lot of cool things and really understand, like, have a grip of like what I want and a better understanding of how to create that versus somebody who doesn't ask themselves these hard questions or make hard decisions early on, and they're 28 years old, whatever it is, and they're like, oh, I still don't know what I want to do. Like, you can preempt that by going and chasing things down early and often. And we hear like in startups, I imagine some people that have stuck around for this part have worked in startups, lean startup, fail often, fail fast. Dude, take a lean startup approach to your career. Like, try stuff, and if it's not working, iterate and fail fast. And that way you'll get to that sweet spot much earlier than if you hang in there and try to make something work that isn't going to work. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. But I also thought I could share a cool strategy right now that I learned recently from Dan Sullivan and his podcast. It's called the 10X Podcast. And it's how to get more out of freelance workers or people that you're contracting, right? And I was thinking about this as me and Aaron were talking about how you keep salespeople motivated, you get the most out of them, you make them happy, you make them love what they want to do. And it just reminded me of this idea from Dan Sullivan that I got. And basically, there's people out there that do this contract work, they have a set rate, you pay them, and they're probably working for multiple people. If you really want to get amazing results from this person, maybe even 2 times as much effort, attention to detail, quality of work, offer to pay that person 10% more than what they're charging. When you do this, you will A, take this person by surprise, but B, also, like, this person now feels a serious commitment to produce incredibly high quality work for you. And, if somebody's charging $200 an hour or $300 an hour or whatever it is, like, that extra $30, the amount that you're going to get back in work quality is probably going to far outweigh that additional supplemental cost that you would add. So if you really want to get some killer work and potentially double the productivity and output of somebody that you're hiring, offer for an engagement. I don't know if this is a great strategy for somebody who's going to work for you really long term. Offer to pay them 10% more of the rate. They're going to give you prioritized attention, focus, and effort compared to everybody else that they're working for. So this is what's on my mind today. I hope you found it helpful. I hope all the people out there that I contract in the future aren't listening and know my little plan. But thanks again for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. The support has been tremendous on Facebook, on Twitter, on all the places, and the new Facebook Mindshare group that we have going. It's been amazing. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have an excellent day.